Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the Western New York Genealogical Society, and my name is Jeanette Schliega. I'm the programming chair. Today, we have Rhonda Hoffman that's going to be sharing with us From Birth to Death, New York State Vital Records. There is no handout for this, but we will add a couple links in the chat for you for some resources that you might enjoy looking at. Okay, Rhonda, take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. Again, my name is Rhonda Hoffman. I'm the genealogy specialist at the Grosvenor Room, which is the special collections at the Central Library in downtown Buffalo. The Grosvenor Room has genealogy, local history, maps, music scores, and rare books. We're open the same hours as the rest of the library, but occasionally you have to make an appointment to come see us, and the only time you have to do that is when you want to view a rare book, and it will tell you in our catalog if something is a rare book. Nothing that we're talking about today would need to be made an appointment for. So today we're going to talk about official New York State births, deaths, and marriages, online records, microfilm records in the Grosvenor Room, where to obtain copies of vital records, New York City records, and Grosvenor Room guides that will help you with vital records. First, I'd like to point out that New York City does its own thing, so we'll talk about that later. Records officially started in New York State for births in 1881, deaths 1880, and marriages 1881. Towns may not have started at the time that the law was made, and sometimes they might have started a little earlier than the law was made. And the Western New York Genealogical Society's website has an awesome list of when each town and village started keeping their records. So if you go to the Society's website and go to their online resources, you'll see a list of the different counties of Western New York, and you just select the county that you'd like. So I chose Wyoming County. And then you just click Vital Statistic Dates in Wyoming County Towns. And then you can see an alphabetical list of all the dates that when people started. So what is accessible for genealogy research? There are waiting periods before these records become public. For births, there's at least a 75-year wait, and the person has to be deceased. Marriages, they have to be at least 50 years old, and it has to be that both parties are deceased. And deaths, they have to be at least 50 years old to get a copy of them for genealogy research. You're probably wondering, are there exceptions? Yes, if you're a direct line descendant and you have proof of your lineage and proof of the individual's death, if you're looking for a birth or a marriage, then you should contact the town where the event took place, and you should be able to get a copy. Each town may have different proofs that are necessary, so you want to talk to the individual town clerk in order to find out exactly what they need. Is there an index? Yes, there is. There's something called the New York State Vital Records Index. But as I mentioned earlier, it does not include New York City at all. Births and deaths for Buffalo, Albany, and Yonkers are not included until 1914. Before 1914, you just go directly to those different cities and you can get a copy that way. And marriages for those same three places, Buffalo, Albany, and Yonkers, they're not included in the Vital Records Index until 1908. So the best way to access the Vital Records Index is by going to Ancestry.com, or if your library has Ancestry Library Edition, which is about the same thing as Ancestry.com. Those are the easiest ways to access the records. So I'm actually going to go live. I'm going to stop showing my PowerPoint, and I'm going to go onto the internet. Oops, that wasn't it. I apologize. So if you live in Erie County, live, work, or go to school in Erie County, you can use Ancestry Library Edition through the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. You'll want to check with your own library system to see if they have access as well. And to access Ancestry Library Edition, you just go to Research and Resources, Databases A to Z, and then from home, you'll be asked near the top to put in your library card number. You click Genealogy and choose Ancestry Library. There's different ways that you can get to the Vital Records Index. I'll show you one way. You go to the search menu, choose all categories, and then you can view the different records state by state. So I'm going to choose New York State. I'm going to choose View All New York Research Options. And you can see that it breaks it down, all the records for New York State, into different categories. And there's a New York birth, marriage, and death option. And you can see they just show the first few, but really you can see right here, there's 106 different record sets. We're going to start with the birth index. And it can be a little overwhelming to look at this list. And what you want to do is you have to pay close attention because New York City does things differently. You want to make sure you're just clicking on one that says New York, not New York, New York, like this one near the top. If I scroll down a little bit, here you can see New York State birth index, 1881 to 1942. So I'm going to click that. And first I want to show you how to browse. Over to the right, you can click choose and you can see there's a couple different options. I mentioned how Buffalo, Albany, and Yonkers keep their records separately. Sometimes those separate indexes are actually included in Ancestry, and they group the database together with the New York State Vital Records Index. So if you wanted to view the Yonkers index, it's here. If you keyword search in this database here, you will be searching both of these items, but it's just nice to see what you're searching by clicking browse. So we are searching Yonkers and we are searching the New York State Vital Records Index, which is this bottom choice here. So I recommend first keyword searching. I recommend, if you just know the name, put in the name. If you know a year or an approximate year, put that in. And if you know the town or county, add that too, but you can put as much or as little information as you would like. So we can go ahead and search. We get some hits. So I'm going to choose this first one because it has the right birth date, August 6, 1911. And it gives a transcription of what's included. So all of the different sections of the Vital Records Index, you'll get the person's name, the date of the event, and the place of the event, as well as a certificate number. This is the New York State certificate number, which is different than the local certificate number. If you'd like to view the index, you can click View. This is what the Vital Records Index looks like. So you can see for this year, it's in alphabetical order by last name. So I searched for our local lady, Lucille Ball, and she's actually not named on this list, but you can see that there are a lot of names here, and you can see it puts the date. Usually there's an abbreviation for the town, so like SCH is Schenectady. Sometimes they spell out the town. You know, usually that seems like more the bigger cities, they might abbreviate. So there's Utica. Lucille Ball wasn't named yet when they put her in this index. So you want to pay attention to that for children. So you can see this is her actually August 6th in Jamestown, New York. So you want to look at it, see how it says the gender, that it's female also, the child is female. So if you don't see the child's name, look and see if they were at the beginning of the index and just unnamed. So I'm going to show you another way that you can get to the Vital Records Index, and that's by using the card catalog. So if you go to the search menu, go to card catalog, you can put in keyword searches for database names. Once you get to know what the databases are called, I kind of like doing it this way. So say I want to look up the deaths that are in the Vital Record Index. I'll put in the title field, New York death, and click search. And again, you got to pay close attention. We don't want this top one because it's New York City. And then, so here's the one that we want. New York, US Death Index, 1852 to 1956. Let's see here. And again, it's good to browse just to see what's there. So you can see that there are indexes for Albany, Buffalo, and Yonkers in here too, as well as the New York State Vital Records Index. And they'll all be searched together. So again, you just, start with the name. If you know the approximate date of death, if you know the location, put that in, and that'll be enough information. If you don't know the location, just keyword search with what you know. So we've got 3 hits here. I was looking for President William McKinley, who was shot in Buffalo at the Pan American Exposition. If I click view this top record, this is an example from the Buffalo Death Index that is included with these records. You can see they kind of put him prominently on the page. And then with this is a volume and page number, or maybe is it a certificate number? Let me see, volume and number. You could then contact the city of Buffalo for a copy of that death certificate. I'm going to go back. And if you're within an index and you decide you want to edit your search, you can click here to edit your search. I'm going to go back even further to that list of databases. The death index for New York State is separated into 2 different time frames. So I showed you the 1852 through 1956, and next we'll go to the 1957 through 1970. The reason this is different is because for this time frame, New York State created their own database for these records for this time frame, and they actually have them on this index on their website too for free. So that's another option. So let's search this one. I'm going to search for Barbara Franklin. And she died in 1952 in Buffalo. And I'm going to click search. I did the wrong person, but we'll look at this. So for this time frame, there are no images. So you'll just get the name, you'll get the age, and you'll get the residence place and death place. The death place is always listed as New York, USA. I want to show you something. I'm going to do a search. I'm going to put a place of death as Medina in Orleans County, New York. And I'm searching just for the name Smith. And you would think I'm searching the entire time frame that there would be a Smith who died in Medina, but I don't see any hits. So I'm going to make it exact to that place. Maybe the database just isn't bringing up the Medina hits to the top for some reason. And you get no hits. What I discovered is that you don't want to search in the death place for the location. You want to search in the lived in field for the location. And then you get tons of hits for Medina. So always use that location, and not the death location, but the residence location. I'm going to go back to that other index again because I meant to search for Barbara Franklin in this one. So this is the person I was searching for. And I just wanted to show you that the death index is, the state index is the same, looks about the same as the birth index does. These names are grouped together by Soundex code. Some of you might be familiar with that, where Soundex groups names that are similar together, and then you want to look in alphabetical order by the first name. So here's Barbara Franklin in Soundex code 652. You can see she died in Buffalo. It gives her age. And then over here, for some years in the 50s, the death index actually gives a cause of death code. And for those of you that get the Western New York Genealogical Society's journal, there'll be an article that explains about how to find out what those codes mean in the June issue of the journal. So that's a teaser for you guys. So let's go now to marriages. I'm going to go back to the card catalog, and I'm going to search for marriages. I'm going to put New York marriage and click search. And here it is, New York State Marriage Index, 1881 to 1967. So you can search by just one name. Maybe you know the bride and you don't know the groom, vice versa. Or you can put in a spouse's name too, if you want to. And again, just put in as much information as you know. And click search. I'm going to click the top hit. What's great about this ancestry database is that it will tell you, it cross-references. It doesn't, usually the index does not have both names on it on the same line, and I'll show you that. But the ancestry database cross-references the certificate numbers with the years, and it will put the spouse's name here. So you can see the spouse's name there to make sure that you have the right couple. And then if you view it, you can see it looks very similar to what we've been looking at. You can see that this is very faded. Some years there was poor quality paper. This was microfilm from a paper index. And if the paper wasn't that great of quality, the ink may have faded. So then when they microfilmed it, that fading is also present. Sometimes you can play with adjustments in the settings. If you click on the little wrench, you can do things like invert the colors. Sometimes that helps. I think that one helps, this one. You can also look at your settings. If you've got enhanced images on, you may want to turn the enhanced images off, and sometimes that'll be better. See how it took that kind of area that was blocked out when you took off that particular viewer? So you want to play with those settings. Let's go back to our list of databases when I search to marriages. Another great record set that's in Ancestry is this one right here. It's New York County marriage records. And it mainly covers 1907 to 1936. I'm going to talk about some really early New York vital records a little bit later, but you might find some marriages for a couple of years in the 1840s too. So you want to always browse to make sure that your county is included in this database. All the counties aren't there, but lots of them are. So you can see there is Allegheny in here, there's Cattaraugus, there's Chautauqua, but look, there's no Erie there. There's Genesee, there's all the other Western New York counties, but Erie isn't there, and some of the other counties aren't there as well. So you want to know if what you're looking for is even in the database. Then you can search. So again, as much or as little information as you want. You can put in the marriage. And it was Cattaraugus County. And search. What's wonderful about this record set is it has the marriage certificates in it. It's not just an index, it shows it has the certificates. These are county marriage records for a certain time frame The towns would still keep their own records, but they were also supposed to give a copy to the counties too. And these are the county records. This is a common format that you'll see in these. And it's a register format, and you just have to look around the page for your couple. So here's the couple I was searching for, Harold Fancher, who lived in Franklinville. He works in a canning factory. His birthplace was South Dayton. His father was Charles Fancher, who it doesn't unfortunately say a specific place of birth. And his mother's name was Kitty Sartwell. And then it tells his age, 24, and the number of marriage. So this is his first marriage. And then we've got Frances Williams, also in Franklinville. She also works at the canning factory, and she was born in Springville. And it lists her parents' names, A.E. Williams and Christina Bentley. And she was 18, and this was also her first marriage. And then it gives the place of marriage down at the bottom. And then it has the witnesses are named down here. You will see other formats of marriage records in this database, but I'm going to show you a bunch of records we have on microfilm in a bit, and that'll show you the different formats. So I'm going to stop sharing again for a second, and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I apologize. It's saying my screen share is paused. Does anyone ever? Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so you might be wondering, where do you get copies of these records once you find them in these indexes, if it's one where the record isn't online? You can get them from the city, town, or village clerk. Whatever the location was where those events took place is where you would get a copy. You can also get a copy from the New York State Vital Records Office. I do recommend going to the city clerk versus New York State, because New York State usually takes a lot longer, but a lot of places are backed up. because of COVID, things were closed for a while. So particularly if you're looking for copies of something from a city like Buffalo, they might be backed up also, so there might be a wait. Sometimes though, when things are normal, sometimes you can go into the office and get a copy right there, or sometimes they'll mail you one and it'll just take a week or two. They usually cost $22 if you know the date of the event. It might be more if you don't know the date. But one thing to consider is sometimes the town clerks will give you a transcription of the record instead of a photocopy of the record. And you never know if they're transcribing correctly or if they might have missed something. So you might want to ask that town clerk if they provide a transcription or a photocopy. And if you only want a photocopy, you can go through the New York State Vital Records Office, and they do provide photocopies. And once again, just a reminder that when you look in those indexes and you get a certificate number, that is the state certificate number. So if you order a copy from the state, you can give them that number, but the state certificate numbers do not match the local certificate numbers. So you could give them that number, but it doesn't mean anything to them. So now we're going to talk about the records that we have in the Grosvenor room. These are all on microfilm. We have one collection of birth certificates. They're early Buffalo birth certificates. They cover 1878, 79, and 1881, and a few from 1880. There is an in Grosvenor room index to these. It's a computer index that staff could search for you. This is a typical certificate that you'll see. It's a return, a birth return. And usually the child is not named, unfortunately. So you'll have to look at the parents' names. You can see here it's John and Maria Miller. And it usually tells their nationality. They're German. It tells that they're Caucasian. It tells the gender of the child. The child is male. And it tells the birth date, the 29th day of June, 1879 at 2:00 a.m. And it tells where the family, where the birth occurred, which is usually where the family was living. That they lived on 50 Mulberry Street in Buffalo. Sometimes later on, names might have been added. So towards the top here, you can see the name was added by affidavit in 1944. So this child was Edwin Coddington Hayes, but on the original, he was not named. And occasionally you will see an updated certificate. So this is a certificate for someone who was born in 1881, Henry William Tank. But you can see down at the bottom that it's stamped in 1940. So that was added later on. Sometimes these early birth returns are a little more detailed. This is usually for the year 1881, where you're going to see both parents' names, including the mother's maiden name. And sometimes you can even see specific place of birth of the parents. So here the father was born in Dębik Posen in Poland, and the mother was born in Tadeusz, I am sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. I apologize, Posen. And what I've noticed is if the person filling out the record, which is often a midwife, is the same ethnicity as the couple having the child, that's when you get more specific information. See how at the bottom here, the midwife was Barbara Pudinsky. And then I found this too. Look at this is an Irish couple. You see Cork and another location listed, and the lady's name is Mrs. Tooney. And then here's a German one where it lists a specific place in Germany, and the midwife is named Mrs. Dalka. So I found that happens quite frequently. There are a little over 50 births that go before 1878 in this record set. So there are some that go as early as 1850. They're at the beginning of these records, and they're usually in terrible condition, like the one that you see here. Unfortunately, some of the records are still in Old German script. So if you don't read Old German script, they may not be all that helpful to you. But sometimes, like in this example, you can see the old script and then you can see someone else translated the parent's name. So this one is John Fisher and this one is Anna Fisher. But sometimes you don't get any help at all. So if there are any Old German speakers that want to volunteer to index these records, we would love to have you volunteer. This is what the birth index looks like that staff has in the Grosvenor room. We have a giant spreadsheet of all of these names, and they're by last name and the child's name if the child was named, and you can see the gender, the date of birth, the parents' names, and then what volume of microfilm and the image number. And then staff could print you out a copy of these images. We often don't index records at the library, but we index these because the order of the microfilm makes no sense whatsoever. They're not in any order, no rhyme or reason. So that's why we took the time to index these records so you could actually find people. You will see a lot of misspellings in these records. So we tried to look in the city directory for the year of the birth and if there was a different spelling in the directory, we would write that over in this far column. So like, see how someone spelled Alexander, Allixander. In that notes column, we looked in the directory and there was a William Alexander, how we would normally see it spelled there at the address that was listed on the birth certificate. So, you know, staff could also, if we're not finding it by looking at names in the name column, we could try to keyword search this other column for names for you. There's another series of buffalo births that are part of the Western New York Genealogical Society collection. They cover 1881 to 1913. There's no index to these, but they are roughly in order by date. So if you know the date of birth, it's really not hard to find them on the microfilm. Lots of people do it. This is a typical birth certificate. You can see it names the child, and then it has the place of birth. It has an address. It has the parents' names, including the mother's maiden name, and it might tell where the parents were born, and it tells the occupation usually of the father. This gentleman, the father was a watchman. It tells the ages of both of the parents too. This is another typical format that you'll see in those records. So to the right is sort of the header of the certificate. So you see the name of the child and then the residence and the date of birth. And then if you turn the certificate in the other direction, you'll see all of the really good information. So you'll see the name of the child, the gender, the date, the place of birth. It gives a specific address, the father's name, his address, where he was born. So this gentleman was born in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and it gives his occupation, a superintendent of Standard Oil Company. It gives the wife's maiden name, and then it gives her address, and it tells she was born in Detroit, and it gives her age. We also have a collection of delayed birth records in the Wings collection. So delayed births were frequently done when Social Security started in the 1930s. You needed proof of your birth for Social Security. And sometimes people who were joining the military, especially during World War II, needed proof of their birth. So they would do something called a delayed birth certificate when the person doesn't have a birth certificate. Just waiting for the announcement. Okay, the announcement is over. So this is what they all pretty much look like. There's the delayed birth certificate. Towards the top, they would want other proof of birth. So towards the top, you might see a church name. So there's at the top of this one, St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church in Eggertsville. So then you know where you'll find a baptismal certificate. And you can also, they could confirm it by a Bible record, by, some other type of record. Even a library record could be used for proof of birth. And then usually these certificates, they'll be like someone who's vouching for the person who was born. So near the top, you'll see that person's name. So a Christian Hoffert was vouching for Elizabeth Raybell, who's the name of the child. And way down at the bottom, we see her relationship to the child. She's her aunt. So this might be someone who was present at the birth. And then you'll see all this great information about the child, when they were born, the parents' names, where the parents were born. And this one gives specific foreign places of birth, like the father was born in Alsace-Lorraine. He was a stonemason. And then the mother was born in the Posen region of Poland. So the library staff went through those records to try to make sense of them, so there's not an index. But on these microfilm boxes, we've shown how they're ordered. So this is the beginning of the film. And you can see there's a group of them that are just way out of order from 1864 to 1869. And it shows all of the surnames. These are the letters of the first letter of the surname that is included in this group of records. So then next, certificates 21 through 51 cover people who were born in 1870 and 1871 with these first letters of the surnames, and so on and so on. They're essentially in order by year of birth, but sometimes you will see them in alphabetical groupings. And don't worry, staff can always help you with these, but I just want you to know that these are here for you to help you find the record that you're looking for. The Wings collection also has Erie County marriage records from 1877 to 1935. This is an example of one of the early records from 1877. You can see it's not in that great of condition, but we have the name of the couple, Kurt Grimm, and we have Mary Klein, and it tells where they were born. So he was born in Lyons, France, and she was born in Kirchheim in Germany. This is an example from 1881. This is very typical, where you'll see the name of the groom and bride, their professions, where they were born, and then their parents' names. Down at the bottom, you will usually see their signatures. This is another typical format. Sometimes there are multiple pages to these documents, and this is the first page of the marriage document. You'll see these types of documents too in that database that I showed you, the New York County database in Ancestry. So again, here's all the great information, all of their places of residence, their parents' names. One of the things that this has on it is it'll have former wives, and it says the husband's wife has died. And then for the woman, it says she has not seen nor heard from her husband for 9 succeeding years, does not know whether alive or dead. This is the second page of that certificate. And this is helpful because it lists the official's name. So it names Walter Dines as a clergyman at 64 Howard Street in Buffalo. So what you could do is you could then check the city directory to see where Walter Dines is a clergyman. And then you could see if you could find a church marriage record for the couple. This is something you may see if your ancestor was a minor when they got married. So in this example, the female was less than 18 years old, and its certificate of consent And so her mother is giving consent for her to get married when she's underage. This is another typical example. It's similar to the registers that we saw in the county database, where you've got kind of a ledger format. So you've got the groom over here and the bride over here. And you can see it's the groom's first marriage, and the bride, her marriage was annulled. And it says that the date of marriage here, and that the annulment took place in Buffalo. So maybe there's record of that. These can be a little bit confusing because the headings for these lines are all the way over to the left. So when you're looking over at the woman's name, you might be confused because you're seeing these here, but you have to go all the way over to the left to understand what you're looking at over here. And this one also gives the name of the pastor. So again, you could research that pastor to try to find out what church they got married in. Here's an example just showing this person is a widow. And then here's another type of example. This is more common in the 1930s, where it's very similar. You've got the justice of peace and the couple's names over here. You've got witness names, and then over to the right, it gives you all that personal data. So zooming in on the personal data, you can see the couple lived in Depew. And you can see that the groom, this is an African-American couple, and where they both lived, the groom was a garageman, the woman did housework, and it gives the parents' names. When you're looking at those marriage records, the marriage records, even though they might be listed, these marriages might be listed in the New York State Vital Records Index, and they often are. The index number, again, that you find does not pertain to these records. So don't go looking at certificate numbers that you find in the New York State Vital Records Index. What you want to do is you want to look at the beginning of each microfilm, where there will be something usually called a Lusk or a Graves Index, to find the page number where your ancestor might fall. So to use this index, if the last name began with the letter A, you go to the A. If it begins with B, you would go to B, and so on. And then the second letter of the name, so let's say the name was Adams, you would go from A, and then you choose D, and then you go across this way. If the third letter is A, then where they cross here is the page number you want to look at in the book. So you look at page 2 for that. And staff can help you with this, but just know you want to look at the beginning of the book. You don't want to just start browsing, blindly through the records. We also have a lovely guide that's on top of the microfilm cabinets that can show you how to do this. For some years, they might be ordered together differently, and this guide explains that. But again, staff can always help you. We're always happy to help. Wings also has Buffalo Justice of Peace records from 1837 to 1876. So this is just Justice of Peace. If your people got married at a church and did not go to a Justice of the Peace, they're not going to be in these records. They're not super detailed, but at least you have proof of their marriage. So you'll have the bride and groom's names. So you could find out the bride's maiden name, and it tells where they're from. So the groom is from Syracuse and the bride is from Buffalo. And this top one, and it tells the Justice of Peace who married them. So I told you I'd talk a little bit about some of those really early records. So New York State tried to start a law in 1847 to start keeping vital records. Some locations complied, especially for the years 1847 through 1849, but everyone stopped by 1851 usually. So it didn't really take. Luckily for us, there are some for Erie County. There are some for the other locations as well. But the library has this guide called Early Genealogy Sources for Buffalo and Erie County. I'll show you how to get to it later on. And there's a section on this guide for Western New York Genealogical Society journal transcriptions. And if you look down, they're ordered by date. So these are transcribed records that you'll find in the journal. 1847 to 1848, early Erie County vital records abstracted from records that are at the Buffalo History Museum. So you can access some of these actual records at the Buffalo History Museum, but they transcribed these records and published them in the journal. So these are the dates. You can see the towns and you can see the dates of the journal. So in the December 1983 issue, the Alden 1847 births, marriages, and deaths are transcribed. So here's an example. So there's Alden deaths for 1847 as it appeared in the December 1983 Wings Journal. And again, the records are at the Buffalo History Museum. If you want to learn more about vital records, I recommend the New York Family History Research Guide and Gazetteer, which is a publication by the New York Genealogical and Biographical Society. It's kind of known as the Bible of New York genealogy. We do have a copy in the Grosvenor room for reference. So now let's talk about New York City. For New York City, births become public 125 years after the event. There's more of a waiting period than for the rest of the state. Marriages become public 50 years after the event, and deaths become public 75 years after the event. Now I'm going to go back to the internet. The New York Genealogical and Biographical Society has a nice overview of vital records for free on their website. So if you want to learn all about New York City records, you can see all that information here. There are some exceptions to the waiting periods, just like for New York State. And this website will list all of those people who can get a copy of those records if they can prove their relationship to the person. So New York City has just put tons of records online on this website, Historical Vital Records, the New York City Municipal Archives. The trick to using them to more quickly find the records, you can browse these records, is by going to Ancestry first. So I'm going to go back to Ancestry and I'm going to look for the card catalog. And I'm going to search for the death index for New York City. So here we go, New York, death certificates. That's what we want. And you search for your name. I'm going to put in a year. Oops. And I'm going to put in the borough of Brooklyn. And search. This is the person I was looking for. And if you click the record, you can see a nice transcription. The data that you want to get to the certificate, you've got the name, you want the year, so you've got the year, you want the borough, Brooklyn, and then you want the certificate number down here. So it's 394. So then you go over here and you can choose either last name or certificate number. You want to choose the right certificate. So we want a death. You've got the certificate number, which was 394. You want to choose the right borough. Brooklyn is the right bureau, and you want to choose the year because these certificate numbers will be repeated year by year. And then click search. There you go. There's the certificate. There is a birth index also. But what I wanted to point out is the marriage records in particular, because there's two different marriages in index, two different indexes of marriages. There is this top one, New York marriage licenses. Then there's three indexes. And then there's New York marriage license indexes from 1907 to 2018. And then down here, there's New York extracted marriage index. And this is the one that you want, the extracted marriage index. So here I'm searching for the Simonelli last name, 1922 in Manhattan. This is the one we want, Andrea Simonelli. And you can see it gives the certificate number 4278. There's a beta search that you can try out too, but you can put the marriage record, the certificate number. She was Manhattan, and the year was 1922. There's the record. So you can see it's got all kinds of good information like we were seeing in those other records, and you've got the signatures down at the bottom. If you look in those other indexes, you'll find yourself frustrated because usually there will be overlapping certificate numbers, and you'll put in that certificate number for one of those other databases, and you'll get a certificate, but it won't be the one that you're looking for. So you always want to make sure you're using that extracted one. Not everything is included yet on this website. So if you go to digital vital records, you can see what has been done. It gives a chart of what has been done. I think it's about 70% or so. They're about 70% complete for the records that they want to do. Another website I'd like to tell you about, if you don't have access to Ancestry or Ancestry Library Edition, you can go to the Reclaim the Records website. And Reclaim the Records was really the reason why a lot of these records went online in Ancestry. Reclaim the Records is a nonprofit that petitions government to, under the Freedom of Information Act, to get especially record indexes put online for free. So they'll petition for like a copy of the microfilm records, if that's the format, and then they'll digitize them and put them online. So a lot of these records are online for free for New York State. If you go to records requests, you can go to New York City and you can see all of these different records that are online. You can go to New York State. You can see even like some Buffalo deaths are online, some Albany, but all of those vital records indexes that I showed you, the births, the deaths, the marriages, that's online for free, those indexes. So I'm just going to click on the births. And it tells you all about them. It gives you tips about searching them. It tells the whole process that they had to go through to get the records. And then you can click on it to just browse through. So you would select whatever year that you're looking for. It goes on to the Internet Archive website. So if you wanted 1884, you would just click on it and start browsing. And it looks just like the vital records index that we looked at in Ancestry. You can zoom in. Again, some of the records are kind of faded. I also wanted to mention that the Grosvenor Room has the New York State Vital Records Index on microfiche. They're no longer releasing it on microfiche. So the most recent that we have is 1964. They stopped releasing it on a microfiche. But sometimes for these very faded records, if you really can't see what it is, come to the Grosvenor Room and look on our microfiche, because it might be just a little bit better than what's been put online. And our microfiche machines can also, you can play with all of the, brightness and everything, focus and all of that. So you might be able to adjust the images a little better than you can online on our microfilm machines. The last thing I'd like to show you today is the Grosvenor Room's guides. So if you're on the library's website, you go to Research and Resources and to Special Collections. And we have Guides and Publications. And if you go down, there's lots of categories. If you go down to Vital and Related Records, the one that you want to look for is Vital and Related Records for Buffalo and Erie County. And that will tell you, list all of that microfilm that I showed you. And it does list the New York State Vital Records Index too. So where you have the arrows, that's the birth of the vital records. And it reminds you about Buffalo, Albany, Yonkers, keeping theirs separate. It tells you about the delayed births we talked about, the other birth records we talked about. And it also names the indexes to use in Ancestry. So like if you were looking for that vital records index and you wanted to know the name of the Ancestry database, it's got it right there for you. If you're looking for those New York State or New York City websites, here's New York City Vital Records. It lists all the different New York City databases in Ancestry, and if any are in Family Search, that'll be listed too. And it gives you a link to that website for New York City records. I also showed you that early records where it showed the 1847, 1848 records for Erie County. If you go to the family history category and go to early genealogy sources for Buffalo and Erie County, that's how you can view that guide. And we've just got a list of resources by date. So eventually you'll see, oh, here's the Wings Journal articles. And there's those early birth records right there. So that is everything that I have for you today. I'll stop sharing my screen. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. That was amazing, as always. Our wonderful friend Amanda has been answering some questions in the chat, but if anyone has any for Rhonda that they'd like to ask in the Zoom right now, we'll do Zoom first, and then I'll open it up to the room here for our in-person people at this hybrid event to see if they have any questions for Rhonda. One of the questions we received was, how can we get access to this recording? And Rhonda has been generous enough to allow us to share the recording of this presentation on our Western New York Genealogical Society's YouTube channel. So give a check, in a couple days, and we should have that posted. Just waiting to see if any questions are going to come through that haven't been answered during the presentation.
Just posting a link to those guides in the chat as well, in case any of you want them.
Amanda's been doing that as well.
Oh, okay. Good.
Mm-hmm. I like what John said. That was a fire hose of info. Yes. Let's see. Marlene asked, is Alsace-Lorraine Germany or France?
Depends on the time period. Yeah, depends on the time period. Sometimes Germany, sometimes France.
My ancestors are from there too.
Yeah. Do you need a library card to access these records?
No. So if you want to use Ancestry Library Edition, you do need a library card if you want to use that database through the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. But if you want to come in and use the microfilm records, you don't need a library card. You can just come in and use the records on microfilm. You can also come in and you don't need a card if you come into the library and want to use Ancestry Library Edition. You can just use it without a card on our computers, or you can even bring in your own personal laptop, use our Wi-Fi, and it will recognize your computer as part of ours while you're in the library using our Wi-Fi. So you could use it right from your computer, and then you could easily download any records that you found.
Rhonda, a question that came in directly was, any suggestions for locating 1812 birth records?
I would look for baptismal records. New York didn't, keep records for that time frame. So you're going to want to look for baptisms. If you're doing Buffalo, the library also has a guide of the different church records that we have, and Wings does have an extensive microfilm church records as part of our collection as well. So we have a nice guide that tells all of the dates for all of the different events that might have happened at a church, whether it's a baptism, a marriage, or a burial.
Do you happen to know if Buffalo is on the list for Reclaim the Records as far as putting any of the original documents online?
They have the death index, and what's great is Buffalo deaths go back to 1852. So that index is on Ancestry and is on Reclaim the Records. I'm not sure as far as other indexes what might be on their list, but they do on the Reclaim the Records website, they have a to-do list. So you can browse that to see what they're doing, what they're going to do in the future, and then they also put what's in process. And they'll usually, it's kind of interesting to watch the different documents that they'll put online, and you can see the whole process as it happens.
Great. If a person lives out of state, is there a way for them to get an Erie County library card?
No, unfortunately, unless you own property in Erie County. But no, if you live somewhere else in the state, you can, there's, I believe, a $20 fee for 6 months, but check with your local library because they might have access to Ancestry Library Edition. And again, if you subscribe to Ancestry.com, it's going to have that in Ancestry.com too.
Great. Do you have any suggestion for someone that needs help researching like a marriage record if they live far away?
So I think I need to know more specific information. If you're looking for New York State and you're at a distance, if you don't have access to Ancestry, then you can go on Reclaim the Records website and you can look up the index and then order a copy from the town where the marriage took place or through New York State Vital Records office.
Great. Do you know any secrets to finding burial records for area cemeteries?
I do not know any secrets. We do have a cemetery guide and it does list what we have at the library. I mean, death certificates will list where the person is buried. Sometimes obituaries will too. So if you don't know the place of burial, get the death certificate and it should list that. But then the burial records themselves, you know, if the cemetery is still functioning, usually there will be an office where you can get access to those records usually. But sometimes, you know, if a cemetery is defunct, you want to look in places like libraries and historical societies, museums in the area to see if they might have deposited their records with those institutions.
Where can you buy the book for New York? I'm assuming they mean the NYGB Guided Gazetteer.
You can buy it from the New York Genealogical and Biographical Society. They have a list of their publications. You can do it as a digital download and you can also have it as a book print format. If you do the digital download, you get access to it immediately. I might have both.
Yeah.
I have both. I keep one on my computer for emergency purposes.
Let's see. You're getting some, you know, thank you for being so knowledgeable and your presentation was excellent.
Okay. And I'll put my email in the box here. You can always email me, or you can call the library too and just ask for the Grosvenor room and ask for me, and I can try to help you. Or there's a general contact email for the library if you go on our webpage, and you could put in a genealogy question, and you know, we don't do lookups most of the time. We don't do lookups for people, but we can give you advice as to what you could do or what we have in our collection that might assist you.
Thank you. What resources might you have that's not on Ancestry, which I think you've kind of gone over a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, if you're talking vital records, what I showed you is what we have in terms of official, whether it's city or county vital records. But, you know, if you are looking for, you know, the church records, we do have lots of church records, especially Catholic and Lutheran. And our guides website, there are tons of guides on all of the resources that we have. So I do recommend you browsing those guides. Like we have listings by ethnic groups, so many different topics. There's tons of guides.
Mary mentioned that she's been waiting for a certificate from the New York State Department of Health since 2021. I feel your pain. I've been waiting since 2019. So we understand. That's why it's always better if you can order a local copy of the certificate instead of the state copy. And it says that Onondaga County is no longer accepting genealogical requests. I'm not certain about that, but Amanda?
Yeah, I have not heard any. Hi, so I'm here, but I actually live in Syracuse and teach genealogy classes there. I am not aware of that. I'll put my email in the chat as well, though. If you want to send me an email, I can reach out to some of my contacts and see what they know.
Great, thank you. Just more accolades for Rhonda. You are easy to understand, tons of information, very informative. People are just sharing, you know, some information. Thank you, thank you. Yes, John, we turned on the lights. Thank you. People are just sharing information. It looks like that's about it. Thank you all so much for attending our hybrid program again today. It was well worth getting up early in Alaska. I love to hear that, Janet. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to share our next program, which is just a Zoom only program. It is not a hybrid. And Laura Diamond is going to be our speaker for our May presentation, and the registration link is right there in the Zoom chat for you to get to if you'd like to come to our program for that. Glenn was asking Rhonda about old divorce records.
So divorce records, there's a 100-year waiting period before you can get access to divorce records. And you want to, I recommend going through the county clerk's office. Oftentimes the county clerks will have something called county clerk registers. And I know Erie County's is arranged by defendant. So defendant's last name. So you just look by last name, and then it should give you a date, and then you could order a copy of it through the county. I will caution you, sometimes records weren't kept or records go missing. One time I tried to access, like, I think it was an 1860 divorce record, and they didn't have it anymore. But then I went to Chautauqua County on a trip with Jeanette, and I found some early ones from the 1880s. So they can be really interesting to look through. So I recommend obtaining them if you can find where they were divorced, but they're not online. There's no index online that I've ever seen. There's no divorce records online, you know, that I've seen for New York.
And Glenn did clarify, what about the divorce records in New York City?
I do not know. I am not aware of any that go online. I'm not sure of the time frame, what is available for New York City. I apologize. But I would imagine you would start with the borough where the divorce might have taken place. That's my guess. And I would go to that New York Family History Guide and Gazetteer, which probably details that information.
Thank you. Apparently, maybe my Zoom link is to open the Zoom rather than the registration. So please hold a second and I will add that in the chat. While I do that, are there any questions from the in-person audience? Any?
Yes.
Maybe a little off point, but how can you obtain the school records for a person that's died over 100 years ago from the Buffalo school system?
Oh my goodness. He asked about school records from the Buffalo school system, and I have no idea how to obtain those records. The best I could say is contact the schools and see if they still exist and if they allow access. I don't know. I know, you know, sometimes libraries and archives might have school records. Okay, I just remembered, I'm very embarrassed. Very, very embarrassed that the Grosvenor Room has Buffalo Central High School school registers in our collection. So we might have some of what Drew wants. We have them, it's like 1860s, I want to say, I don't know, into the 19 teens, maybe a little bit further. So we do have those. They were through a donation. So check with libraries, local libraries and archives to see if they might carry the old school records. I remember I went to the Westfield Library in Chautauqua County, and they had some, I think it was school tax records there. It was some kind of school records that I got from my ancestors. So check with local libraries and then check with the school systems and see what they might still have. I would imagine the school systems probably have other higher priorities, so it might be something that's difficult to access.
Okay, I think I found it. I apologize for that. This should be what you click on to register for our upcoming May meeting. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you to whoever caught that I was just giving you the link to join. We're not ready yet. It's not till May 18th. And that's a Wednesday at 7 p.m. for the Jewish Genealogy 101. Question, what are the years included in the early birth index images? What are the years
included in the early birth index images? It is mostly, it's 1878, 79, and 81. There's a little bit for 1880, and there are some that go back to 1850, but there's just like 50 or so certificates that are before 1878.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I was giving you guys the wrong link for our upcoming May one. Can we give Rhonda a virtual round of applause? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and in person too. In person applause. That's awesome. Thank you so much as we try to do the best that we can with this hybrid format that we are trying to do to reach all of our members that are local and worldwide. And if you are not a Western New York Genealogical Society member, thank you for attending this program that we have opened up to the public, and please consider joining us. It's only $20 to help us continue to bring programs like this for free to the public, and also support a local society. And we've got some exciting stuff coming up. Our 50th anniversary of being a society is going to be in 2024. So right now is a wonderful time to join up, learn all about what we're going to do for that coming in the future couple of years, continue to get notifications about our programs, and then also our wonderful quarterly publication, which was called The Journal for many, many years. And now Rhonda.
It is going to be called, renamed the Western New York Genealogist for the June issue. We've changed the format a bit for the journal, and we decided that it should have a more appropriate name. So it will be called the Western New York Genealogist.
Yay! Thank you everyone so much for coming. We appreciate it, and have a wonderful holiday weekend if that is what you're celebrating. If not, just have a great weekend. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
for all joining us today on this Easter weekend. Can you save the chat?